Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. I wanted to do a brief talk today focused on a concept called the 3 reasons to avoid the smallest battery configuration for the Model 3. Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Bonjour, wie geht's? Wie steht's noch immer aus Weinen? Strasvice. My talk today, so what happened was I had a meeting with a good friend of mine who is preparing to purchase his Model 3. He's been told that he's within a month or so, or I guess 2 months or so, from getting delivery, and so he needed to do his configuration. As you all know, at this point, the only version available of the Model 3 is the larger of the 2 engine configurations. I believe that's a 75 kW, which goes about 300 miles. So what I was kind of surprised by was he started giving me some details on how his decision making went to give up his Model S and move over to the Model 3. And there are a few details that sort of popped out of there, which resulted in my coming up with this video on the top 3 reasons to get the larger rather than the smaller battery pack. So the first of those reasons, and I'll call it number 3, is the fact that resale value. So it's a bigger stretch to go for $44,000 plus tax than it is to go for $35,000 plus tax. But one of the issues that pops up is that over time of ownership, your battery will probably degrade slightly. And so when you have a user that might need more distance, having a smaller battery means you're going to have a car that's valued less than the vehicles that might have the bigger battery for their engine. So yeah, it's a good idea to try to save the money, but on the flip end, you're going to lose some distance as the battery works over time, number 1, and number 2, people who are buying it are going to want the most flexibility possible. So by having the larger battery, you get the benefit later on in a resale situation. The second reason to think through carefully what you're doing in this regard is unexpected need for battery life. So what do I mean by unexpected need for battery life? Let me give you an example. Officially from Tesla, the battery, when not being used and your car is parked, loses 7 miles of charge each day. So in theory, you're going to have it plugged in the garage if you have a garage. But if the vehicle is sitting outdoors, and let's say in a city situation you're on the street, that vehicle is losing about 7 miles of charge on a daily basis. So what this creates is an interesting problem, which is that if you have the smaller battery, you literally have fewer days you can sit out there before you go to a recharge or a supercharger situation. You know, let's say you're traveling and you need those miles. That's a variable. And this is without any other activity. I believe this is just keeping the alarm, etc., going. Another challenge that pops up that might be unexpected use of battery is the fact that if it's a very cold or a very hot climate, the battery, before moving the vehicle, will go through a conditioning process. And my understanding from several owners, particularly in cold climates, is that the conditioning process can result in about half of your battery life lost in the conditioning, and you don't get to drive anywhere. The battery's conditioning itself, and you've just consumed half of your battery life. So there's a whole realm of unexpecteds. We haven't talked about you using your heater, the radio, wipers. There are all these going up hills versus a flat surface. There are all these interesting ways where battery distance can get consumed, and by having the larger battery, you don't have to worry about this. The number 1 reason to consider the larger battery in my mind, is the fact that I just learned that the reality is each of the superchargers as of August of 2017 are separated by 175 miles. So I think when Tesla did this, what they had in mind was this is about the minimum distance. You know, there's a certain number you need if you put this kind of distance between locations. And when they weren't making money off the chargers, they didn't want folks that are very close to town to be able to drive over and just charge up easily. So for whatever reason, the gaps between in the current iteration is 175 miles. And I believe this is the case in Europe as well. So this creates a challenge. If you have a battery that's about 200 miles, 205, and you have the heater or the air conditioning on, what that means is that you have just enough charge to miss making it to the battery station. So another great reason is if you have a 300-mile battery, you can use all the amenities of the vehicle and not be extremely worried about what happens to you as you're trying to make it to the next charge up, be it home or away. And frankly, as we all know, the bigger the battery is, the better the chance that you just have to deal with the battery less. So if you don't have a 20 or 30 mile round trip each day, that might mean you're charging or supercharging a couple of times a week versus having to do so on a daily basis. So bottom line is that the bigger battery is more costly, more to try to own in terms of cost, but there are a lot of reasons why it's actually your best choice and makes sense to stretch to get to, even if you have to give up other features that you frankly may be able to add on later, but are not as critical as the range of the vehicle that you're dealing with. There are other elements, and I look forward to the comments that pop up from current and future owners on this, but I thought it was a really interesting point because as you can review the points that I've made, but as I was thinking it through, I was fascinated by the fact Tesla has chosen to initiate at that larger battery rather than the smaller one. And yes, it's costing more money, but just getting into the EV range is nice, but not having to worry about things I think would be helpful. I don't know if there's any validity to this, but the friend who I told you about is getting delivery of his vehicle sometime before December, I think someplace in October, explained to me, if you look at the EPA website for that larger battery, he was saying that the EPA rating for that battery is actually 400 miles. I don't know if this is legit. Nobody's discussed this. We don't have this vehicle in people's hands to really find out what that distance is. But man, if that thing gets 400 miles, I mean, what a revolution, to think about that. And frankly, because it's a lighter car than the Model X and S, I was thinking if you ran it at real slow speeds in a 30 to 40 mile an hour range, 400 miles should be a real possibility. So, at any rate, I want to thank you for your viewership time. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Please like and subscribe. Any input you make helps everyone else in terms of their command and understanding of how all this works. I also want to just highlight that I highly recommend, if you're planning to be an owner or current owner, that you try to spend, a half hour a week on the forums, because I think they really help you identify some of the challenges that might pop up with ownership that are worth being mindful of. So, if you've chosen to stick around for my last extra time, again, reviewing, number one is distance between charging stations, which will get better over time, but currently it's 175 miles. So a 200-mile battery doesn't help you out a lot if you're using vehicle amenities like the lights, etc., etc. Number two is unexpected use of power in the form of temperature changes or idle vehicle, etc., that your flexibility is hurt on. And then, you know, we covered number 3 already. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Have a great day, and please like and subscribe.